Good evening, Ministry of International Trade. Today we will discuss the case of Nevermore versus Crowley. Let's start talking about the relevance of the likeness test. The likeness test is used to know if a domestic measure discriminates against import products which violates W articles. In this case, which involves biofuels that are produced in Nevermore and Crowley. If greenfuel and cornfuel are found like products, any regulation measure that treat them in a different way must be justified based on legitimate objectives. Also includes the principle of national treatment that is part of the Article 3 of the GATT, which prohibits treating national products in a favorable way than imported products. However, these products were different because greenfuel doesn't produce carbon emission, produce 50% fewer carbon emission, and have to pay 10% sales tax. That means that is category 1, and cornfuel produce carbon emission and pay 13% sales tax. That is category 2. Also, these biofuels are made with different materials. Greenfuel, for example, is made with recycled cooked oil, and cornfuel is made of pine cone. They have different tariff classification on the Nevermore system of 8 digits. After analyzing the difference and similarities between those biofuels, the likeness tests help us to identify if these products follow the same measure and pay the same taxes. In this case, not. In this second part, I'm going to talk about the Article 1 and Article 3 of the Guide. First one, the Article 1 refers to give the same treatment to all members without any discrimination. It ensures equal opportunities to import and export for WTO members with the measure enforced. In this case, Nevermore applies different taxation rates to cornfuel and greenfuel. There's no violation of Article 1 because the differential treatment is justified. Article 3 prohibits discrimination against imported products in favor of domestic products. In this case, Nevermore imposed tax regulation that don't discriminate against cornfuel. This biofuel produce carbon emissions and it will face a 10% sales and also assume 3% of producing emissions. Compared to greenfuel, which face the 10% tax, there is no discrimination because they are not the same product. There is no violation of Article 3, Paragraph 2 of the GATT. The measure imposed by Crowley that required 20% of all vehicles and machinery run on low-emission biofuel doesn't violate the Article 3, Paragraph 4. That says that any measure that affects the internal sale, offering for sale, or purchase of products must be applied without discrimination. And Nevermore introduced a regulation for mandatory eco-labeling of products that use biofuels based on the production process and are divided into the categories previously mentioned. Taking into account this, both articles are relevant to this case because it's important to determine if the regulatory measures that Nevermore and Crowley are using against biofuels follow the WTO articles. By understanding this, we can assess if the treatment of the differences between greenfuel and cornfuel is justified and non-discriminatory. In this part, I am going to talk about how Nevermore justifies its restrictions under Article 20 of the GATT. First, after Article 20 of the GATT means that country can justify their measures that are incompatible with the WTO law by using exceptions like animal, human, plant life, and health. If the measures aren't justified, is chapo. Nevermore imposed a tax that affect cornfuel because they contaminate with their carbon emission and affect biodiversity. Their bird resources that also affect tourism. Contamination also affect the breeding cycle of the red fox and the Nevermore's oak tree. To improve this, they produce measures to protect the environment and follow obligation of the GWA and created a Nevermore carbon taxation regulation that is based on taxes to biofuels and carbon emissions. They must pass the necessity test to justify this measure. By imposing the measure, they are preserving their nature and animals, which make it justifiable. If we compare, for example, this case with the U.S. Shrimp, we can conclude that the U.S. Shrimp was unjustifiable. The case of Nevermore and Crowley is justified because it's necessary to impose that measure to protect the nature and the animals. In this last part, we will discuss a non-market strategy for Crowley Machinery Inc. The company can use its knowledge and experience to develop innovative technologies for cleaner energy solutions and improve energy efficiency. This strategic initiative will position the company as a leader in the transition to a cleaner and efficient energy. Using a different source to produce corn fuel that generates zero carbon emissions can make it category 1 and worthy of non-violating Nevermore's sections 66.6 and having their patent for their converter. With this strategy, corn fuel producers will give them a name on changing categories in the Happy Fox side. It will benefit Crowley Machinery Inc. and Nevermore's market, bringing a cheaper fuel that doesn't harm biodiversity.